It's Buttons with Conroe Games. You hear him whining already, and he's attacked me like 3 times because he thinks he's going on a walkie walk. But instead, we're going to do a video here. Then we'll go for a walkie walk. I promise. It's like 100 degrees outside, dude. And the stream no longer exists. And we don't want to die of heat exhaustion. Yesterday, all you two did was sat in the shade, and it was 8 o'clock at night when we went. If we go right now at 5, we'll melt, dude. We'll melt. Anyway, so I've got a lot to talk about here. I actually have the notes here. Maybe the notes will work out better than me just rambling. But I want to talk what I'm seeing in the market, and we'll quickly go down all the games and share a few of my thoughts of what I'm seeing. So first of all, we are definitely in a collector's market to where Final Fantasy has shifted the demographics over to more collectors than players. And the biggest indicator of that is all of this sort of product is gone. So I cannot find zipper binders. I called every distributor and looked for every type of zip binder. So there's Ultimate Guard, there's Ultra Pro, there is Dex Protection, which is my favorite, by the way. I think they're still having problems with the tariffs and all the uncertainty there. And even looked at, there are generic binders oftentimes that they have. Plenty of other different binders that have the zip type of binders, and they are all gone at distribution level. But what is not gone is things like card sleeves. So card sleeves from Dragon Shields, other than katanas, those have been hard to come by, and deck boxes. So usually with Ultimate Guard and Game Genic, it's the deck boxes that have the hardest time of them keeping in stock. So whenever we go on like a bull market, the deck boxes, they are the things that evaporate quickly. But you know who does not need deck boxes? Collectors. Collectors do not need deck boxes, and all of the distributors are full. They're completely full of all of the like deck box and card sleeve related things. So the other things that are getting hard to find, so I wouldn't wait on things like this, is the perfect fit sleeves and the top loaders. So perfect fits and top loaders are also becoming quite scarce. In fact, Ultimate Guard is out of all the distributors. I can't get those from distributors for a lot of the top loaders. I'm having to use this other brand called Iron Guard right now because it's very, very tough to get anything like that. So we're talking like all of the, basically anything to do with collecting, grading, and storing cards is hard to come by. So we're definitely in a collector's market. Another thing, though, that I can find with binders, which is a huge warning sign to Magic the Gathering if they're going to try to go down this collector's route, is there is a blowout right now. There are a bunch of distributors actually fire selling things like Murders of Karlov Manor, Outlaws of Thunder Junction, Duskmourn, Aether Drift, not the Magic sets, not the cards, but all the accessories. So Ultimate Guard and Ultra Pro, and I think there's one other company now that is able to do branded Magic the Gathering stuff. All the Final Fantasy, gone. Gone. You can't get anything Final Fantasy oriented. However, all the sets, Bloomburrow, even Bloomburrow was on that list too. And Bloomburrow actually was a set that was very beloved. But binders, from that, if I want zip binders, I can still get them from those type of sets. So what we're talking about is like generic binders. And again, that shows me that we have a lack of players versus collectors, because the people that would be buying those branded items for like the Duskmourns and the Aether Drift or would be on the collector demographic, and they aren't touching a set or those sets. So they're only going for the Final Fantasies, and we'll yet to see exactly where they'll start to spend their money if they actually stick with Magic. So this is a huge warning sign for Wizards of the Coast if they're going to actually try to move their equity over into collectability rather than into utility. Then yeah, it must be miserable for places like Ultimate Guard and Ultra Pro for trying to gauge how much they should print for a particular set. Because now, of course, they're getting this massive missignal that, oh man, we underprinted Final Fantasy. Well, maybe with Edge of Eternities, we better print more of the binders and the sidewinders and all that kind of stuff. And I think that, I think we're going to see a lot of deals on that sort of stuff. And again, it's an indicator that no one is actually collecting Magic the Gathering. They're just actually collecting Final Fantasy. So I'm not expecting a lot of, of course, maybe Spider-Man and Last Airbender, but for Edge of Eternities, I'm not going to expect the same sort of kind of ravenous appetite that the market has had for anything Magic the Gathering related. So people that are getting into Magic, like stores and speculators and people trying to have a retirement off cardboard, I think they're going to get killed when they misjudge that it's Final Fantasy is the outlier here and isn't the kind of the way going forward. Like Magic's not going to all of a sudden just start printing liquid gold out of every set they do. They are still, a thing that I'm still seeing is things like Aether Drift, even going back to like New Capenna, Murders of Karlov Manor. Those are still stinker sets that no one wants to touch. And it leads me into my next topic is that Wizard of the Coast, though, has, I mean, they're triple dipping at this point. So typically, if you're looking to print cardboard and you're basically, you have to have the contents of your sealed product be worth it for people to continue to buy, especially if you're going to have a print to demand policy like Wizard of the Coast does. And so there has to be enough of the value in the sealed product to incentivize people to buy and continue to buy and, you know, be satisfied with their purchases going forward. However, Wizard of the Coast keeps really leaning into the collectability. And this is another thing that I've started to see, particularly with Wizard of the Coast or with Magic the Gathering, is we are starting to see prices plummet in the expected value of even things like commander decks. I mean, commander decks just have a value in them, but even things like play boosters, because the money that they've now just funneled basically into serialized cards and ultra collector cards has devalued the rest of the, so how it kind of works here. I was explaining this to my buddy over here about how you can't have it both ways. You have your cake and eat it too. You can't do collector boosters and still expect utility, like the price of people actually playing cards, to actually retain its value. And there's actually another product, it's these commander decks that are suffering even worse than collectors, because how Wizard of the Coast used to print commander decks is they'd give some sort of budget. They'd look at the, they usually would 2x. So if they wanted to sell a commander deck for $50, they'd put $100 worth of reprint value in that commander deck to guarantee that it sells. Because they know that people, especially at the early days of Commander, when they're printing Commander products, were going to look to see if there were any good reprints. That was basically the way that people would try to decide if they wanted to buy a set. And we'd go back to, this was the mindset of Magic players was things like the master sets. So reprints, the tried, tested, and true cards. However, with Wizard of the Coast, with the power level increasing, as well as now the collectability increasing, now they cannot rely on reprints like they once did. And so we're going through a weird time period for collector boosters that are absolutely destroying the profitability, not even really profitability, just the sustainability of every other product not called collector boosters, because they've pushed all the money into things like serialized cards. And it's kind of the reason why why the playable cards in Pokemon have no value, because they put so much of the value, or the community values so much of the chase cards, that there can only be, there always will be a ceiling for what a product can actually offer. So it's not, you know, a rising tide lifts all boats type scenario. It's like if one thing is expensive, if people are going after the serial cards, well, then the utility cards can't be worth money. And now Magic is in this dilemma now, and I think they're going to start seeing it with products, especially commander decks, is that they can't rely on reprint value, or, I mean, not even reprint value, even new card value at this point, for these cards to sustain long term. And so one thing I've noticed, especially with commander decks, is they used to put in like the $3, $4, $5 cards, and they've done that so many times now that they're now down to $1 or less, like 50 cents. So I was looking at the chromatic lantern that is supposed to be a chase card for supporting your local game store, like this new version that's coming out for like the support your LGS, and it's like $1 is all it's worth. And a chromatic lantern, a card that is heavily played in Commander. And I was trying to figure out, man, this is crazy. When did this collapse down? And I looked at how many Commander decks they had put them in. And it was Wizard's strategy of trying to put reprint equity into Commander decks with this sort of philosophy that it has to have this, you know, financial value out of them. And when they now allow collector's editions to include Commander specific cards, then they devalue the value of the cards that were going to basically be in the Commander deck. So now the strategy that they could have had is if they had cards exclusive to the Commander decks, that's the only way you could pull them, then that would actually put a floor on how much those cards could actually be worth. Like they wouldn't have to rely on reprint equity, because even if the cards weren't that sought after, the only way to get them, or if maybe they made them even more rare in collectors, which they're not, because they're extremely common to get in their various versions in collector editions. If they did that, there would still be a floor for Commander decks really never bottoming out, because that's the only way to get those cards. And there would be enough people that wanted those specific cards, or the collectors, I think at that point, would have enough demand to actually, outstretch the supply, or at least keep the commander decks kind of stable. So Wizards has really done a good job of really killing the value of what we call the reprint equity, where I think it's just too far for them to recover. And I think it's been a lot of bad decisions in the past few years. The first one was definitely the list slot. Like, the list slot was the most nonsensical thing they've ever done. That was, I'm trying to think of the set where they started it, but they were put into set boosters where they had a slot that would just have a little planeswalker symbol in the bottom right hand or the bottom left hand, and it would just be basically a carbon copy reprint of a card. And sometimes it'd even be in the foil version. Like when they did the mystery boosters, they actually chose like an expensive foil out of Odyssey as like the list slot card. It was like, what? This was an ultra collectible card. The only reason that it was worth money is that foils were incredibly rare back then. And Wizards of the Coast goes and pulls a fast one and says, okay, your collectible card is worth nothing now. And it's just like Wizards needs to get their act together, because I don't think they understand exactly how, like, collectible value, utility value. I mean, this ecosystem is very fragile, how they affect each other, and you can't do these sorts of practices. So what I do going forward if I was Wizards is I would quit even worrying about reprint value in commander decks. And in fact, it'll help them actually sell sets going forward, or help them actually sell something like a Commander Master set, if they didn't continually reprint the artifacts and the lands in every commander deck, and they gave people some things to upgrade and to start working towards. And it's not that big of a deal now, too, with all of the lands that are, and the artifacts that they put, like the signets and I'm trying to think of the Boros, the two-color, they're signets. Those type of cards, like they could give those a lot of breathing room for those to actually would be worth $1 or $2 again, rather than the 5 cents that they're worth for most of those cards, because they've reprinted them a billion times. Now again, it is supposed to be a playable commander deck out of the box, but you have to, I mean, it's a give-take. You can't be printing, like, some of these lands are just slightly worse than shock lands, or slightly worse than like the best of the best lands. But the reason they're 5 cents is I like the ones where they've only printed like a couple of them. So like in the Czech lands, or some of those where they've included those in some of the Doctor Who decks, and they haven't in other ones. And they'll be like, the other ones that haven't been included in a commander deck are still like $10, and the ones that have are like 5 cents or 50 cents. And it kind of just shows you that reprint equity is actually not working for these commander decks, because of just the sheer amount of these are open. And that's where I'm kind of leading into where my strategy with commander deck would actually be kind of the strategy that One Piece has with their starter decks. So they always, to make sure that these products always sell, is they always include a booster pack. So the floor is the booster pack. So these will never be dumbed down to under the value of a booster pack. And commander decks could do the exact same thing, where they put a play booster, or in my opinion, what they should do is just put a collector pack, an actual collector pack in all the commander decks. And that would guarantee that they sell going forward. And again, they'll push them away from maybe their other collectors selling as well. And again, they'd have to kind of go back to the drawing board and figure out exactly what is put in collector packs, so that wouldn't really kill the value of those going that route. But all in all, they need to do something, because they haven't changed in so many years now that the market is just absolutely flooded with these commander-specific cards. And as I stated before, when they then go and chuck them in the collector boosters, so in the collector boosters, you can get commander-specific cards in their normal versions that you can basically get out of the commander decks, then it's just an ecosystem that is just bound to fail. So getting rid of the list slot is helpful. They're going to have to get rid of master sets, in my opinion, going forward. I don't think there's any room for them. It's especially with this, like, Edge of Eternity's coming out with the other, what I'm going to talk about, their other slot that I think is kind of a bad idea, which is basically printing these cards like the Enchanted Tales out of Wilds of Eldraine, and we just had it out of the Final Fantasy slot. If they want to do that, they need to be actually pretty rare. And that's kind of the problem with this Project Booster Fund, is oftentimes these specialty versions of the cards are not rare. And it's the old adage, if you make everything special, then nothing is special. And why One Piece and even like Star Wars Unlimited and Lorcana and especially Pokemon are not really suffering from this yet is their specialty versions are special. They are very hard to pull. And Wizards of the Coast has done that on top of like, now look, they've even gone a step further, and then they're like, okay, we're gonna go serialist cards or these surge foils. But again, it's just too much versions out there, too many options to be collectible, that only one or two of them can end up being collectible, and the rest of them end up being basically the same price as a regular card. And Final Fantasy, like I said, is the exception, because right now there is just a lot of people that are entering into this collectible sphere. I think that Wizards of the Coast is actually, they were kind of lucky that Pokemon took off with this whole collectible run, because now people are looking for, now that Pokemon is very, very expensive and hard to get, people are still looking to, kind of get their feet wet in this sort of collectability sphere, and the only thing that really looks lucrative right now is Magic the Gathering. But unfortunately, Magic the Gathering is mainly still a utility-driven game. And so it is, as I stated, a pretty big warning for Wizards of the Coast if they're going to drive their utility into the ground by just making things so ultra collectible and, printing, and having people like chase these chocobos and other serialized cards and still flood the market with regular cards. Yeah, then they're going to be in a world of hurt going forward to try to sustain their products being able to sell in the future. So yeah, Edge of Eternities though, with that other slot with reprinting, chase cards, there's very, like Shocklands again, I think this is the kind of the straw that will break the camel's back, because it hasn't been that long since they've been in the standard set. Shocklands were supposed to be like the power level of a Pioneer, and now it doesn't really feel like there's any purpose to Pioneer if they're going to put Shocklands in standard. Yeah, because if you have, there was always kind of format defining cards for each one of the formats. Like this is the power level of each one, and we're not going to like print a lightning bolt into Pioneer, and we're not going to print a fetch line into Pioneer. And it was supposed to be they're not going to print like a shock line back into standard, and they'll have like shocks are considered the second best land after fetch lands, or after like dual lands, and of course the fetch shock is the ultimate combo in Pioneer. But anyway, that's what I have kind of this talking about, where I don't know if I've lost everyone with my train of thought here with where Wizards of the Coast is going. But man, apparently they've like hired economists and things. And the problem is I know that they're just like absolutely, patting each other on the back and sniffing each other's farts right now because of the overall success of Final Fantasy. And I think that there is a lot of credit that is still not Wizards of the Coast doing. They hit the perfect timing with Final Fantasy. They did hit the perfect IP. And it actually has a lot more to do with the IP, I think, than anything else. As we've had things like Assassin's Creed through Doctor Who, done okay, but not really spectacular. And I still think that we are running off the high of Pokemon more than anything for this. So that is my kind of 2 cents for where I'm going with Magic the Gathering economy. So let's talk about the other things that have been coming up. So I got these in. Here's a game that I think is doing it quite properly, that is player focused, which is Bandai. So they've come out with a Gundam card game, and so I've got some starter decks in. And apparently they're going to be doing this very similar to One Piece. So kudos to Bandai, because they have a few other lines like the Digimon, and I mean they do have organized play. They do have other structured things for their other Bandai games. But One Piece has been their game that has been managed the best, and it is really now starting to, like the decisions they made 2 or 3 years ago are really now coming to fruition, and their game is just taken off. So One Piece is actually quite strong. We had a good showing in our One Piece. We were going to record some videos, and then we forgot to record some One Piece. But we had a really good showing for our One Piece, and it felt really cool because here at our store, we've been kind of plagued with the commanderification of Magic. So, it's an ultra casual format. We get packed for it. Tonight's Thursday. If I were to take back a camera, I'm sure our tables are full of Commander players back there. But it's just like a different demographic. It's a different type of person that Commander appeals to. And kind of the 1v1 has just been missing from Magic for so long that it was quite fun to actually get people excited about playing like a 1v1 One Piece. And it's still new to everyone. Like we don't have anyone, we have like one player that's played in tournaments. Like I think 2 players that have really been, playing, and they've been driving all the way to, in the Salt Lake area to play in tournaments because we haven't offered it here before. But now that we're offering it here, they get to be kind of stewards of the game. And it's exciting when everyone's trying to figure out exactly how One Piece works and upgrading decks. And, most people have started with their starter decks and gone from there. So I'm hoping that this Gundam is quite fun as well, because we're going to do that here. We've been giving out these free decks. These are not free decks, starter decks, but I've been giving out to my Bandai players, my One Piece players, to try to get them interested in Gundam. And if we get Gundam going, I think it'll be fun. Yeah, so Star Wars Unlimited is still going quite strong. This is the other topic that I wanted to go on, because we have, I know I've been solicited a lot lately by a bunch of just card game designers. And we had another call today about what I'm asking us if we start carrying. I can't remember what card game it was. And this always happens when markets are hot, but it's concerning to me of how many games are popping up right now, because we have League of Legends coming out. I've talked about this in another video. We have Lorcana and Star Wars that are absolutely cooling off like crazy. And they're going to be fighting tooth and nail to keep those games alive, because those are huge cash cows and they both have huge potential. They're Star Wars and they're Disney. Those have massive potential for future sales, even in the collectible range. And they're both pretty good games. If you actually want to compare them to other games that have come and gone in the past, I think that both Star Wars Unlimited and Lorcana are really decent. Like they're solid Bs in my opinion for game design and whatnot. They've been able to cultivate a community and tournaments and whatnot. So you got to think that they are going to kick and scream and claw to keep their profit share with especially League of Legends coming in. So it's always been kind of baffles me that card game designers they choose like the wrong timing to try to introduce games. Because right now I think it'd be the worst timing, because Magic and Pokemon are going to have all of the focus because of how hot they are. When you want to release a game is when Magic and Pokemon are dead, and then you try to like slip in a game. And I understand that maybe under a cool market that's not the right environment either. But yeah, I kind of feel bad for these game designers, because I know they want to get their games out, but there's just too much, in my opinion, going on right now. And maybe this is where my analogy that a rising tide lifts all boats, where maybe this is the time to kind of strike and get the card game out. But as far as energy is concerned, with One Piece, Pokemon, Flesh and Blood even, and Magic, yeah, it's going to be really, really tough to compete with just the energy of those games currently. So anyway, that's kind of the topic that I have at hand today. I don't know, I had some other things I was going to talk about, but I've kind of lost my train of thought already, and we're getting past my 20-minute mark where my attention span goes kerploot, and yeah, then I forget what I'm doing. So anyway, this is one thing. I'll show you one little product that I've been buying up before it goes. So as I stated, I think that Magic is headed more into the collectible range. I am actually thinking that Lord of the Rings is going to be I've talked about this in other videos. Set boosters are now gone. Scene boosters are getting very scarce at distribution level. I would not wait on scene boosters. I think that's the next one that is going to be bought out. I have seen some what I call targeted buyouts, because all distributors at the same time will be gone of a particular product. We saw it happen with March of Machines recently, and that was kind of a die. I need to get back to doing my Market Monday channel. Well, it still is the kind of the kind of $1 million question though, is like the March of Machines and those type of that whole era just had a lot of really good cards printed in it just fell flat in Standard. A lot of them didn't have any chance in Modern, with like the Modern Horizons era of Modern, and Pioneer's kind of dead. And again, those cards are kind of weird. A lot of that era printed a lot of 4 and 5 drops, and they weren't that flashy in Commander, but now with more cards printed, they might actually have a lot of synergy. We're talking like the team up cards in March of Machines. I think all of those are going to age quite well. I think Phyrexia's Proliferate and Toxic mechanics are going to age well. And all these things that's the $1 million question. So are we ever going to get back to a Magic where you got to think when like the mechanics of like Lorwyn got popular, or even like Mirrodin, Scars of Mirrodin things got popular, and just the scarcity of the cards at the time made those sealed products look super lucrative. Again, I'm talking more of the modern era, 2014 to 2019 era, where older sets actually had like utility when Commander was taking off. And this could be the exact same thing with this age of cards if Wizards of the Coast does not go down this massive reprint policy, collectible chase policy, and really not just that, really like doing it all, as I stated at the first of this video, where that whole topic was, by having all, like focusing on all three, not really focusing on one, where this game's going to want to try to incentivize people to buy, but really like, okay, how about everyone? How about we try to maximize utility and the value you get out of utility, maximize collectability, and have this whole gambling aspect of the game. And so possibly these sets, like this is kind of the question. Are these sets with their little slots, like the Wilds of Eldraine, like the March of Machines, and like the Phyrexias, they're kind of unique abilities in here, they're powerful mechanics that are going to be tough to reprint in the future. Are they going to age well, or are we just going to keep getting pushed out by products like Final Fantasy that are going to continue to just be, more flashy? And not just that, like again, my biggest kind of complaint about this Final Fantasy set is I really feel if there ever was a set that didn't need to be reprinting Atraxas and reprinting Rhystic Studies, it was Final Fantasy. It would have sold without that. And if they were going to do those cards, they should have made them ultra, 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 ultra rare, so that then it gave something for people to chase and collect, and also didn't destroy the future equity or compete against products that still have Rhystic Studies in them, like Wildsville Drain, for these to actually continue to be purchased. So Wizards of the Coast has a lot of things I think they need to definitely correct. And again, it will fall in deaf ears, because Wizards of the Coast, like I said, are probably like holding champagne parties right now because they think they've just knocked out of the park. However, we've seen this happen again and again. I'm always surprised that it seems to be the most inept company. And actually, to be fair, they're not the most inept company, because obviously they've done some things right. But it just makes me so sad that they could have done things more right, if that's a proper phrase to say. And it's just like duh things. It's kind of the hubris of Wizards of the Coast, that they think they're too big to fail, that they do things that no other games could get away with, that a lot of other games have to really be aware of how they release these type of things. And, again, exactly what they want to be in that collectible trading utility kind of aspect of card games. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll get back on trying to release these videos as much as possible. We have some outdoors videos we're going to release again. I don't know how well those actually do on this channel, but we've been doing a lot of rock climbing and whatnot. And again, be looking forward to the comments in the comment section below. It's been Kevin with Gunner Games. Thanks for watching.